My name's Matt. So glad you joined us today. Let me be one of the first people, maybe not one of the first because, some of our guest services team were masked up out here greeting guests as they came in. It's Halloween today. Halloween's a tricky day. It's a weird day. It gets celebrated in a lot of different ways, but I always loved Halloween as a kid. I did. I grew up in a small housing development about 5.5 miles north of the town where I grew up. So imagine this little neighborhood just next to the church right here, but even a couple miles further away from civilization. It was just in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. And so our neighborhood would come alive on Halloween night. And a lot of that was because my friends and I were up to tomfoolery and shenanigans, but we loved going around on Halloween. I was a senior in high school. I put a sheet on, got on my knees, went up to my neighbors' houses, the people that watched me grow up from like age 3 up, and I'd trick or treat. And they're like, oh, you're such a cute little ghost. And then they'd give me candy and I'd take it off, like, haha, and I'd leave and run away. But that was it. This little neighborhood in the middle of nowhere, southern Indiana, it was just super quiet. And I was shocked when I came to college in this town, down at Olivet. I was shocked at the amount of sirens I would hear daily, just sirens all the time, because we never heard sirens where I lived, because it was in the country. We were out in the middle of nowhere. So hearing any kind of siren was like, it was just like, what like dad TikTok is. All the dads just go out like, what's going on? They'd stand on their front porch and just, yeah, there goes a police car. All right, and then they'd go back inside. They had no idea what. Sometimes Halloween was eventful. I was in my house, and we didn't have central air at the time. We didn't have air conditioning in our house. We had this massive window air conditioner unit that was, it was not like standard side. It was enormous, and it sat in our dining room window, and it was so big, and you could hear all kinds of like sounds from outside because it was so big, and we didn't have it sealed off right because we just put it in ourselves, and it was a hot mess. And I remember one night, Halloween, it was finally quiet. It was about 10:30 at night. My sister, 8 years younger than me, is in bed already, and all of a sudden we start to hear sirens. And I was like, yes, action on Halloween. How amazing. Well, the siren noise got closer and closer. And I peeked my head out my front door and saw on my small little street, no longer than about a half a mile, a car coming at about, 60 miles an hour. And what appeared to be 800 police cars giving chase. And I was like, who paid the local, sheriff, volunteer deputy to come out and have some fun on Halloween? I lived on the corner. This car just went straight through the corner into the cornfield next to my house. And 10 squad cars surround them in my property. And I was like, this is real. And so I go outside, grab a baseball bat because a 15-year-old with a baseball bat certainly is going to be helpful. And I'm in the house, and Mom and I go hide in the kitchen and our sister's asleep. My sister, we don't want to wake her up. So she's fine. We go into the kitchen, and right there's that window air conditioning unit, and I can hear, get on your hands and knees. Get on your hands and knees now. There was a guy evading the police, and it happened right in my house. There were like 20 deputies. There was an ambulance that came. I watched this guy get carted off, like in handcuffs, at my house, Halloween, and I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to tell this story for years. Like Halloween's amazing. Now, I'm praying that however your Halloween goes tonight, it's less eventful than that, less terrifying than that. See, Halloween has become this weird thing. It's kind of gotten celebrated. People decorate for Halloween like they used to decorate for Christmas. Have you driven through some neighborhoods and you just see the insane amounts of things that people put in their yard? I'm not really like all there. I'm not all in there, but I enjoy the day. And some people don't even celebrate Halloween at all. That's cool. This is not a message today about celebrating Halloween, even though I just spent a couple minutes talking about that. Today's a day to talk about what really this day is all about. And it's not about candy. It's not about the cute costumes per se. I mean, this day has some pretty ancient roots and history in faith, in the Christian faith, actually. So tonight, all around our community, even right now, across the hall in our Wombaland, in our GP Kids environments, there are kids dressed up at our mega awesome costume party over there. There are kids, there will be adults tonight, who will put on a costume, they'll put a mask on, and they will, for a few hours, pretend to be something they're not. And isn't it always fun, like, to see the cute little kid, like, oh, and what are you supposed to be today? And I'm Captain America. I'm a princess. It's fun, and it's cute, But this has way deeper roots than that. See, tomorrow, November 1st, is All Saints Day. Let's get kind of high churchy here for a second, for just two minutes, okay? History lesson, all right? So anybody familiar with All Saints Day? Anybody with Catholic roots at all? Like know All Saints? Okay, so All Saints Day is tomorrow, okay? And it used to be called All Hallows Day. And then the day before, today, it used to be called All Hallows Eve, which has become Halloween. Okay, so tomorrow in the high church world, particularly in Catholic traditions and other very liturgical kinds of traditions, All Saints Day is celebrated as a day to honor the saints who have gone before us in faith, to honor the people who have lived lives of extraordinary character and have been disciplined in their lives and have lived a holy life honoring God in their lives. And we celebrate them. But what used to happen on the eve of All Saints Day is that people in faith communities would grab a mask, make a mask. I know, like, talking about masks these days can be really, like, political and crazy and stuff, but that's not what we're doing today. They would take a mask and they would put the mask on in the evening before, All Hallows Eve, the evening before All Saints Day. They would put on their masks to disguise themselves for this reason. They would talk about how the saints have lived these amazing holy lives and how the evil spirits or evil doers would do their best to try to pull the saints out of their faith and into a terrible, terrible life. And so on All Hallows Eve, believers around the world would put on masks to disguise themselves so that they could look a little bit like those evil spirits. But then on the next morning, when All Saints Day came, they would take off their mask and the light of Christ would illuminate them for who they are, and there would be this massive celebration of the folks who've gone before us. Amen, amen, and amen. That's what it used to be. It doesn't happen much these days. I mean, there are not much recognition for All Saints Day, at least in my circles. I didn't grow up, the day after Halloween having an All Saints Day feast. Like, I didn't do that in my tradition in my house. And I don't think I'm asking us to even do that. I think what I want to talk about for just a few minutes this morning is, what masks are you wearing? Are you wearing any masks? Now, let me just be clear. I'm not a saint. At least I don't I don't consider myself a saint at all, because I know me. Some of you I consider saints. But when you think of the word saint, sometimes we go very, very rigid in our thoughts of what sainthood really is. I mean, we think about people like Saint Teresa, Mother Teresa, who served in Calcutta, and she was canonized in 2016 as a saint. We think of Saint Patrick because he has a holiday, and Saint Valentine. But I would implore you, we don't have time this morning, I would implore you to take some time to get out your Google machines today and really see what Saint Valentine and Saint Patrick's lives were really all about. I mean, saints, to be canonized as a saint in that tradition is a pretty big deal. But I didn't grow up in that tradition, so I always heard people talk about the saints of the church in southern Indiana. They'd say, the saints of the church, they lift us up in prayer and they hold us all together. We love the saints of the church. And I always thought, Do you just have to be old to be a saint? Like, is that the one qualifying thing in our tradition, is just to be old? Because there was a lady in my church who was a saint, and her name was Leona. We referred to her as Miss Leona. When I met Leona, I think I was 5 or 6 years old, and she looked the same the entire time I knew her. She just looked old, you know? She wore the same beautiful dresses, the same like 5 or 6, just rotate them through. But she was most known for this beautiful pink dress that she wore, had a jacket and a pink skirt, white shirt, and like this pink bow tie that kind of flared out, and she was amazing. Her hair was always set perfectly. She had the big old glasses that we grew up with, you know, that our grandparents grew up with, and she sat in the second row at my church, right there. She would sit there, and she was just the happiest person in the world, and everyone that I knew in my life referred to Leona as a saint. And I would watch as a kid and as a high school student, even as a college student before Leona passed away. I would watch parents, my friends' parents. I would watch other older folks in our congregation. I would watch them before and after church just make a beeline to Leona, and just because she was a saint. And they knew that Leona prayed and prayed and prayed. And they would run to Leona and they would pour their heart out, and she would just love on them. Well, about the time I was a junior in high school, my youth pastor said, we're going to do our October, after Sunday night. I used to call them an afterglow back in the day for all the old school folks in the room. Well, we used to call them an afterglow, a big party for the youth of the church at someone's home after a Sunday night service. And my youth pastor, Michael, said, you're never going to believe this, Matt. We're having our October, like right before Halloween time, our October afterglow at Leona's house. And I was like, I'm sorry, come again? Leona lived on one of the busiest streets in Columbus, Indiana, Central Avenue. She lived just outside of where town got crazy. But I mean, just traffic beeline all the time. I thought, how does this lady survive? I mean, it was one of the things where it went from 2 lanes to 4 lanes to 5 lanes with a turn lane in the middle, and her front yard just kept getting taken, think Armour Road, right? Her front yard just kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And it's like, okay, Leona's gonna have the youth over. I learned a little later on that when she was young, in her 20s and 30s, that she was a volunteer in the youth group at our church and just loved young people. And nobody had ever just asked her. Nobody had said, hey, would you think of doing this? And she was like, I'd love to. So she had our youth group over in October. It was awesome. We got there. There was more food than I had ever seen in my life. Leona had been a widow for about 25 years. She was in her mid-80s in the mid-1990s and had more energy than this room combined. And she had cooked all day. And we just had fun, and she was just loving on us. And then all of a sudden, she calls us into her living room with furniture as old as everyone in this room. And she said, everyone sit down. I want to play a game. And she had this very, very meek, really high-pitched voice, and she'd talk like this. It was the most stereotypical thing you'd ever heard in your life. She said, I want to play a game. I'm going to come around to each of you, and I'm going to whisper into your ear an animal. And when I get around to the end, when I say go, everyone's going to make the noise of the animal I told you, and it will sound like an African safari. It will be glorious. And we were all like, a bunch of like punk high school and junior high kids with this 80-year-old woman, and we're just like, whatever you say, we'll do it. You want us to go run in traffic? We'll go. So she makes her way around the circle. She gets to me and she whispers in my ear, and I was like, you got it. Keeps going around. Okay, there's about 20 of us in the room. Okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. And with every ounce of gusto I had inside of me, I went, "Eeyaw!" like a donkey, and I just kept going. Except everyone else just sat silent. And I started to look around, and they're all laughing at me, and Leona, standing right in front of me, is going, and She was one of those ladies that she'd get giggling, like she would even get giggling in church. She'd just get so happy. And there I am, like a literal, you get it, just, And it finally set in. She just punked me completely. All of my friends are laughing at me. I feel this small. I'm just absolutely at the end of my rope. And she's just like, So after the laughter finally dies down, she said, "Can I just talk to all of you for a minute?" And I was like, "No, you cannot. You will never speak to me again." And she said something to me that I've never forgotten. I have the ability to remember lots of things. I have my wife calls it just an unnecessary amount of insignificant knowledge wrapped up in this brain. I just remember things. One of the things that I am blessed with, as I get older, I learn that I remember lots of conversations I had with people in my life when I was young, vivid memories. And I can vividly take you to that living room right now, looking at Leona in the face as she talked to us and said something very similar to this. There's a lot of voices that speak to you that are trying to tell you who you should be. Some of you are pretending to be something that you're not. If someone you trust tells you to be quiet, you should be quiet. And many of you did. And Matt, evidently you trusted me, and I told you to be a donkey, and you did. And Matt, you might have been expecting Old MacDonald's farm to bust out here with all of these different animal voices, but that didn't happen. You actually, Matt, were the best donkey I've ever heard playing this game. Oh, thank you so much. Matt, if somebody tells you to be the best donkey in the world, just be it, because that's who God made you to be. And I was like, why are we spiritual? This is not a spiritual matter right now. This is not spiritual. And she said, actually, Matt, I didn't choose you because I thought you'd be a good donkey. I chose you because I just like you. I like who you are. You're fun. I knew that you wouldn't question what I said. I knew you would trust me. I knew that because of who I know you to be, that you would go for it, that you would just be the best donkey. So when God tries to tell you to do something, just accept it, because he knows who you are. He knows you. All right, let's eat cake. And it was done, and she walked away. And I sat there, and I'm just going to be transparent. I was in a pretty rough spot in my life that time that I was at Leona's house. I was not the greatest person in the world. I'm pretty confident that my mama had been one of the people that had slipped over from her seat back there to Leona's seat up there, a saint of our church, and said, "I need you to pray for Matt, because he's lost. He's lost. He's really trying to be something he's not." I mean, I was wearing a mask. I was trying to be someone I wasn't. I was acting one way at home, in a broken home, in a home that was a hot mess. I was acting one way there. I was acting a completely different way in the hallways of my school. I was acting a completely different way on the baseball field. I was acting a completely different way in the gym playing basketball. I was acting a completely different way when I'd go to church on Sundays. I was acting completely different in the job I worked at, stocking grocery shelves at Foods Plus. I was different everywhere. I was just trying to be exactly who I thought people wanted me to be. I was masking up every day, and I didn't even have Facebook or Instagram to fight with either. I was just messed up. And my guess is that you, because you're human, one thing that I'm learning, the older I get, I still feel really young, but my age says that I'm in the middle section, and I'm getting closer to retiring than I am to starting a career, and accepting that reality is a tough thing to think. But what I've learned is that this guy in his mid-40s is the same kid seated in Leona's couch 30-some years ago. Same kid, same guy. Just a little more experience. And I'm guessing that many of you fight the same demons, whether you're in your 60s or your 20s, your 30s or your 70s, or anywhere in between. I'm guessing that we all fight the same demons to often want to be something, someone that we're not, and we cover ourselves up and mask ourselves up to try to cover up who God really has made us to be. I mean, the people that celebrated this night, this All Hallows Eve, this Halloween thing, before it was about getting as much candy as you can, my kids are gonna sprint tonight they're gonna try to hit the whole neighborhood in record time because they just want that candy. Before any of that ever happened, people of faith, people in a faith community, and people who watch these people, we're seeing them act in a way to say, we don't want to be anything less than the saints we're honoring tomorrow. And whatever we have to do to protect ourselves from the evil one, if we have to put on a mask tonight and pray that we blend in just enough that the evil ones will pass us by so that we can tomorrow take the mask off and let the light of Christ illuminate us so that we might grow to become the people of God that he's called us to be. If that's what it takes tonight, that's what we'll do. But my call to you this morning is, what masks are you wearing, and are you ready to get rid of them? Are you wearing a mask of joy? You come across as a super happy person, but deep down you're just miserable because life's a wreck? Your job is in shambles? You've been dreaming big, big dreams, and you're afraid to take a step of faith because it just scares you too much? Are you wearing a mask that fits in your pocket? There are things about these things that are awesome, but I mean, sometimes our life shows up in a nice, pretty square, and sometimes I wonder, I'm thankful that people can't see all the garbage over here. I really want people to see this me, not the rest of me. This is a pit that you can swirl in all day, all night. Yes, I sound like an old fuddy-duddy. I'm not trying to say, take social media away from your kids. But I'm saying, if you're struggling with that, I know that young kids struggle with this. I know that I struggle with this. It's really easy to try to pretend we're somebody that we're not on this thing. What if God was saying to us, put that mask down, take it off, because I want you for who you are. We're all tempted to wear a mask. And in an article written a few years ago called The Mask We Wear, Marcia Wiedeker says this, quote, sometimes without realizing it, we assume masks, a way of being or acting that doesn't really express who we are. We've taken on these modes of behavior or expressing ourselves perhaps as a way to please others, to win friends, or to merit personal recognition. Masks, however well we wear them, are incongruous. That just means out of place. I had to look it up too. Masks, however well we wear them, are out of place with our true inner feelings and thus with who we really are. They may look good for a while, but in the long run, they become burdens. They cease to feel good because they don't fit us. They're not an authentic expression of who we are. Friends, it's time to lose a mask that we might be wearing and let the light of Christ shine on us. I mean, this was Mallory's mask 2 years ago for Halloween, Forky, because we like Disney. I mean, I don't know how the kids saw out of this. It's awkward because you're looking through the eyes. But I mean, if it's here, I can't see anything. I mean, look at this. This mask, you see how thick it is? I don't know if you can see that at home online, but it's at least a quarter of an inch thick. And I mean, I got a flashlight here. I mean, you can see that, right? But I mean, this really blocks the light from coming. I mean, if I'm right here, this is a super bright flashlight. I can go to power mode, double click, and it goes crazy. I can go super crazy and make it, party time. This would blind me. I mean, I can start to see the light here. And this is a cheap mask. Who would have said anything from Disney's cheap? It's a cheap mask. It's only that big. But it does a really great job of blocking the light. Friends, the masks that we wear, the things that we pretend to be that we're not, block the light of Christ from shining on us so that we might grow in our faith. Not so that we can be like, I'm a saint. Because that's not how saints act. Saint just means to be holy, to strive to be something more like God has wanted us to be. It's time to lose the mask. At the end of the day, I think the words from King David are the best for us to hear. You know, King David started off as this giant killing boy who grew into some pretty amazing things, royalty, did some pretty bad things. He wore the masks of power and prestige. His sexual ethic was really terrible with the story with Bathsheba. He did some pretty bad things. And as he grew in his faith, as people in his life convinced him to rip the mask off and allow God to shine his light on them, David reflected often in his life and recorded many of these reflections for us. And in the 139th Psalm, David says this: "For you, God, created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." David, who had everything in the world he ever could have dreamed or imagined, he could snap his fingers and have everything come right to him. David, when he finally realized that the mask he wore made him less like the God who had made him and more like this power-hungry, prestigious, fake person who was only trying to scratch his own itch to make him better. When he finally realized that and realized that who God made me to be, fearfully and wonderfully made, David helps us understand that I'm enough and you're enough. And I would rather have this face with the light of Christ illuminating on it than a pretend thing that looks really good but is really, really rotten at its core. So my prayer for us today is that we'd lose the masks, that you'd celebrate Halloween tonight, not because of the craziness and the scariness and all of the things that 21st century tells us about this day, but you would be reminded that this is a day to remind us that the mask can come off, that the light of Christ can illuminate us, and we can be all he wants us to be. Would you pray together with me? God, I want to say thanks for who you are. For reminding us today that we don't have to be something that we're not. For allowing us to be comfortable enough in our own skin to hear you say, lose the mask. Let my light shine on you. You're enough. You don't have to pretend to be somebody that you're not. You don't have to let your Instagram life look one way and your heart be another way. You can just be you because you've made us. So I pray that we would be reminded today that who you say we are, we are. That we would be reminded today that we are chosen by you. And for the people in the room that are feeling inadequate, that the word saint, there's no way it could fit. Remind us that you're not calling us 20 years down the road to do some miraculous big thing like Teresa did, or Valentine did, or St. Patrick did, or what Miss Leona did in my life. You're just asking us today to lose the mask and be a little more holy like you, to let your light shine on us and through us. And for that, we say thanks and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us online today. If you found the content helpful and added value to your life, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. That way you're the first to know about new content that gets added. Thank you again for joining us today, and we hope to see you next week.